Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. As always, we'll start with a little bit of news of what's happening in EVE Online. And first of all, we have, of course, the drone changes that came to the game where they basically lost any type of aggro against NPCs. At first, it was a little bit annoying, but I have to say I myself managed to adapt decently quickly to the change. It basically became a part of my rotation because I do tend to use hotkeys for my high slots. So, the rat that I want to take down, I just go a 1, 2, 3 on it, for instance, for some E-War, and then my weapon system, and I just press F after that or before that to send my drones on that same target, if that's what I want to do. So I felt like if you use hotkeys, it was not that big of a problem to adapt to the change, but quite a few people were complaining about it. It is, of course, a drastic change in behavior from those drones, and if I'm not mistaken, in certain situations where you lose any ability to target enemies, it can be super annoying. I can imagine that some content all of a sudden becomes next to impossible to do, and then there apparently are some bugs when it comes to assignments that you can do with the drone. So CCP has decided for now to revert the changes while they look at all the feedback and make a decision on what they want to do. I kind of think that it would still be logical that drones would follow an offensive command from a high slot module as well. So if you're using E-War on something, or if you're using missiles or weapon on something, that the drones would then also choose that target. That to me still makes sense, but we'll see what CCP decides to do. For now, it looks like the drone aggro will come back to the game though. And then the other thing that's happening is that we have the Winter Nexus event that's happening at the moment. So you have lots of stuff to do with finding exploration sites, using snowballs on NPCs, stations, players, all of that stuff, mining stuff, combat stuff, which I've covered already, which I think is actually the easiest and most accessible way to do it. Once you find a system with a couple of combat sites, you can just very easily chain those in a battleship. They're pretty damn fast, and you can earn quite a few points towards let's see if I can find that here. Should be the Winter Nexus, there it is, to earn skins and some of these cerebral accelerators. Personally, what I like about this is that it's pretty fast, pretty accessible. It feels like you can, on an off day, make quite a bit of progress in this progress bar here as well. And for me personally, what I like is over here we have Abaddon, Rock, Hyperion, Maelstrom, and Crusader here, but the battleships come first, and I personally am most interested in the battleship skins. So for me, just doing like half the track, getting two accelerators, and then the first batch of skins would be plenty. I'll be very happy if I can get that done before January 1st, basically. So I feel like this is a very, very nice event so far, very open to different playstyles, easily accessible. You also have the interesting filaments, which I haven't used myself just yet, because apparently where I have my rattlesnake is right in the middle of a storm, so I have plenty of content right around me. But I'll probably try to take a look at that next week if I find the time. And so far, yeah, looks pretty good. Nice skins, a couple of accelerators, login rewards, and I'm not sure. I think it's like this Yule chilling spree that I think I'll try to keep up with. It's mostly using snowballs on NPCs or on capsuleers, as far as I can tell, and that should give like some sort of a special reward at the end. I don't fully understand it just yet, but if you complete all of these challenges on a daily basis. So we'll see how it plays out. Of course, I don't feel too much pressure to do any of this either. Most of that, except for the accelerators, I would consider it to be more vanity item stuff that's pretty cool to have, but not really an absolute necessity, so you don't have to completely scrap all your plans in EVE Online to take part in the Winter Nexus if you don't want to either. I feel like it hits the spot, and this is pretty nice with a lot of content, and I personally, while it's not too logical from a scientific point of view, I love the graphics of the ice storms so far. So pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with what we've got here for this winter season in EVE Online. Next up, let's take a quick look at the new Eden store, and let's see, there were quite a few updates, and alright, we are getting some new stuff front and center. That's good, at least that seems somewhat fixed. And so we have the Yule Star skins that are back, if I'm not mistaken. It includes some new ships, like Stradios, I think, and Broodix, for instance, and it's the same thing as last year, which I think was pretty cool. You have this cooldown, which will continue this bar that will fill up, and at the end you'll have this animated star as part of the skin. They're pretty unique, they're pretty cool, and if you want to like fly to Jita for like fireworks celebrations with New Year, you want to do that in style, one of these skins can definitely help with that. Then we have some bundles on some apparel. I personally feel like you're already able to earn some really cool apparel yourself, so this is not my market or my cup of tea, you could say, although some of this looks pretty cool, like here the desert skin, Hephaestus desert skin. I think that looks pretty pretty cool, honestly, with a pretty nice palette of colors that I kind of like. So yeah, there's plenty of choices down here. Then we get some more bundles front and center, some hot skins as well, and over here Sakura Shumiyu skin feels and sounds like something that would be at first made for the Chinese server, and there's also pink in there, so which is not exactly my cup of tea, but if you want to look a little bit different, then this is definitely a possibility here as well. And honestly, it's not like it's a full Hello Kitty 100% pink skin. It's basically a purple to pink flavor here, so it's not that extreme either. There's bundles for that as well, so alright, there's plenty of stuff for you to explore if you want to as well in the New Eden store, which may be the reason why we see plex go up a little bit. There may be some extra demand for all of this stuff. And then, oh no, not apparel but services. We do want to take a quick look at that. I think I'll make that the main focus of the New Eden store here, but we see nothing special in sales or anything like that for the services, right? Omega clone time, daily alpha injectors are not on sale, so here you can clearly see that direct correlation. You can basically create daily alpha injectors through plex as well. And the skill extractors, nothing that is special here, so that's okay. Maybe it'll come later as we get closer to the holidays. So let's move on to the market then, which is of course the main reason why you guys are here. We're moving in at 740 for plex and stuff. There we go, and let's get started as always with plex. And you may have seen it, alright, there's a small order that's coming in here at below 2.8 million, but most sellers in Jita are definitely above 2.8 million, and it's for competition with the Tranquility Trading Tower and the Rank Grazo in Perimeter, which are two player-owned trade hubs that have a substantial part of the plex trade in hand at the moment because of the cheaper taxes that they're able to command. Of course, Jita has this edge of being able to trade plex through the app, and we're talking just below 2.8 million for the sellers there as well, just below 2.7 million for the buyers, and it's not very visible on the chart, but you can see on these daily averages that we have a slight upwards pressure in the price of plex happening at the moment. I would not be surprised that this slight upwards pressure is actually from all of the new stuff that's in the New Eden store, and there's a little bit more interest in grabbing some plex and turning that into a couple of skins that you actually want. After that, we have the multiple pilot train certificate that actually had a little bit of a dip on the volumes, which was of course a consequence of the plex sale that doubled the volumes for plex for a couple of days. That has this ripple effect throughout the rest of the segment, and here very visible on the multiple pilot train certificate that dipped below 1.3 billion and then moved right back to that average it was on through most of November. We're talking about a little bit below 1.4 billion in the player-owned trade hubs, just above that for the sellers in Jita 4.4, and just below 1.3 billion for the buyers in general. Let's take a look at our skill extractors next, following plex very closely, and again not super visible on the chart, but you can see at the tail end that we want to go back up in price a little bit. 312 million for the sellers, 310, almost 309 million for the buyers. That is definitely a very close margin between sellers and buyers here, and it also shows, I think, a little bit of interest in grabbing some cheap skill, relatively cheap skill extractors at the moment. I would say I would not be surprised if some investors are basically looking at this, looking at what's happening with the holidays, right? We're getting lots of SP, so that should put pressure on the skill injectors themselves, but this may just be the right time to get prepared for what happens after the holiday seasons, when sales start to drop off, when we don't get as much skill point anymore, as many skill points anymore for daily login rewards and things like that. Potentially this could be the right time to pour ISK into some extractors so I can create some skill injectors at the best possible margins and then try to sell them at a profit later on. And let's see if that pressure is still here. Here are the large skill injectors, and yes, it is. They're actually dropping below 650 million ISK for the average price. 644 million for the sellers, dominated again by the player on Trade Hub. So we'll take a quick look at the margin with Jita itself. 673. That's a pretty wide margin, and that is basically showing this pressure, right? If you have this close margin, such as with plex, which also part of it, of course, is what's happening with the app, but you do have a much closer margin between sellers and traders for plex itself here. That generally indicates that there's slight upwards pressure on the large skill injectors. You get a much bigger margin, and you can see this downwards pressure for skill injectors. So basically, eventually, if this keeps up, these sellers in Jita will also be forced to go down in price, as they have to close that gap with the sellers in the Trade Hub. 644 million for the sellers there, 620 or below that for the buyers. Pretty damn cheap skill injectors, and also, in my opinion, it is of course the price of plex that has gone down substantially, but I would say it's very likely that at the moment players are very happy with all the skill points that they can earn in game. You can just log in, grab a couple of NPCs, get some skill points that way. You just get some for daily login stuff, and now you get an extra track as well, if I'm not mistaken, for the Yule Festival. So there's probably a lot less need to also invest in large skill injectors at the moment. The meta is also a little bit uncertain. You know, what's going to become the next flavor of the moment. There's no need to invest in Rorcal pilots or in carrier pilots or anything like that. And so yeah, players are holding off, and we get a chart like this, for instance, for the small skill injector. Started the year at almost 190 million at its very peak, and is at the moment basically down almost 50%, landing on the 130 million range. 130 million for the sellers, 123 for the buyers. Still a very large margin. You're basically able to probably grab a small skill injector for like 125 million in a matter of hours, days at maximum at the moment. There is a lot of pressure here, and I think there may just be a little bit of preparation that is also bringing a little bit of upwards pressure on skill extractors and perhaps on plex as well here, because this story is bound to end at some point, in my personal opinion. Finally, we also have our daily alpha injectors that are continuing to do its own thing. Really, it's at a 1-year high point. It's staying well above 45 million ISK. We're talking 47.5, almost 48 million for most sellers. And here you have this very big difference. I do want to show that large scale injectors 642 and then up to 673. That's a decently wide margin between sellers and buyers, between Jita and the player owned trade hubs. Here, more demand, more competition, upwards pressure. 47.5, 48.2 million, even percentage wise, considering that it is such a cheaper item. This is a super narrow margin compared to the previous one. And so we do see upwards pressure right here. So 48 million for the sellers, 44 million for the buyers. These are also pretty close by, like less than 10% if I'm not mistaken. Just doing some very rough math here. It's not a lot, and it shows strong demand for the daily alpha injectors compared to the large scale injectors and the small scale injectors. Different market. I would say that this does show that there is a substantial part of the player base at the moment that's was very happy to play the game as an alpha clone. I'm going to say, considering there is a lot of interest in the daily alpha injectors as well, that there's new players, a lot of new players here that find this to be a very nice way to stay motivated as well. Try to earn 50 million, grab a daily alpha injector, give your character some boost, yeah, they also get lots of login boosts at the moment. So if you want to get started, or if you want to build up a character at the moment, basically now is the perfect time to come in and to just keep playing the game and explore the game as an alpha character. So I think that this is basically why these daily alpha injectors are basically the reverse of all of these large scale injector, small scale injector markets. It's really doing its own thing, and it's showing a lot of strength for the alpha clones at the moment. And then finally we've got the hypercores that are continuing to show a little bit of pressure. Very interesting. 283,000 for the sellers, 266,000 for the buyers. Definitely at the low end of the spectrum here. Still well away from the bottom, so up from the bottom that we had through the summer, so it's showing a little bit of increased activity, but not sustainable above 300k or anything like that. I must say it's perhaps not the best barometer to try and see what the general activity in the game is. It is pretty damn niche when it comes to the Hypernet relay, so again, also I would say a good sign for people that were worried that this was going to become a major gamble mechanic that would become super predatory or anything like that in the game. I really feel like it has found its niche. I mean, there is some spamming of that happening in the trade hubs and things like that, but it is really used for super expensive items that can then be raffled off for very cheap prices potentially. So yeah, it is a gambling mechanic, but it has these absolute fair odds. Basically, you buy a number of tickets, the full number of tickets also represent the full price. So it's a fair system. There's not really an edge, that much of an edge that a banker, you could say, that the issuer can get, and the customers, yeah, they know exactly the odds that they get. So not my cup of tea, that type of gambling, but it has its niche, and yet it's not too disruptive either, which is something that a lot of players feared when this was first announced. So I feel like CCP did show that they know what they're doing when it comes to this. They did make a system very specifically to answer to the question that some players wanted to be able to do raffles in game, and here they take a small cut through these hypercores from the issuers, but the relationship between the issuer and the buyers is basically one of absolute transparency and fully even odds. So I like it. I think it's fair, and it does fit within the sandbox rules in this way, in my opinion. Let's move on to the minerals then, coming in at 1735. There we go, and we'll start off with tritanium, which alright, big volume spike and a nice jump back up to 7 ISK. We're talking 7 ISK for most sellers, but we do have to go to Jita just above that, 706. Buyers coming in at 671, so apparently a big purchase. This was not right around a week ago, so I actually got some comments that I disrupted the mineral market somehow. I don't think that that's necessarily true. I hope that no one actually does such big moves based solely on EveTalk. I hope that everyone that uses this as basically extra information to try to stay informed on what's happening in the game and perhaps spot some opportunities, but I definitely never think that anyone should just look at EveTalk. And when I say, alright, I think Isogen should catch up to Mixalon at some point at least, that you don't see this as the only buy signal that you have yourself. Always do your own homework, make your own choices. I just give you guys my take on the market, and here a couple of days ago we did have like triple, or almost triple the daily volumes in tritanium, so lots of buying that has pushed the price back up above 7 ISK. Very good news for high-sec miners. I would say that tritanium above 7 ISK is always is a good price, has always been a good price, and makes it worth it to go after Feldspar, which last week it was a little bit less. It was right on the average normal price, nothing too special, so you could start to hesitate with between selling and holding off on your titanium, or really focusing on other things to mine, which was definitely the case then. But nice little comeback here. We're back at 7 ISK for titanium, which is a more than fair price, I would say. Next up, we've got pyrite, which had jumped up to 20 ISK last week, and it's giving back a little bit of room, but not that much. We're talking still 19.7 ISK for the sellers of pyrite, 1953. Look at that high demand for the first buyer coming in with 10 million units. That's not nothing, and this is a very nice comeback, and obviously compared to where it was about a year ago, quadruple the price. Something that you can focus on now if you feel like titanium is not worth it. You should of course always also do your own calculation as to price per hour if that's what you're worried about, but here it does look like pyrite is still very good to focus on, because you're getting the best price of the year for it. After that, we have Mexalon that is really still very, very strong right here. 75 was still like a good price. I'd say in line with the 7 ISK for titanium here. So right now we're still selling that at a very good premium. 121 for the sellers, 116 for the buyers. And again, we do have that, how would I say this? Logic between volumes, available volumes, how easy it is to mine a certain amount of titanium compared to pyrite, right? It should take a lot less time, and here you have 500 million units, 50 million, another 50, another 150, another 50, and this sells for around 7 ISK. Look at pyrite next. All right, you've got 50 million, but that's the outlier. We're going down to the 5 to the 20s, another 50 here, no 500 million units anymore. That's going for 20 ISK, and then we move up to Mexalon, which goes for, well, 1 of 20 million, and then we're talking 1, 2, 5 million, 3 million here, and this goes for 120 ISK. That's a logic that I can follow. So if you're mining in high sec, well, anything that yields Mex, pyrite, and then titanium, right, is probably your best bet to focus on at the moment. Mexalon is going for, even historically speaking, an incredibly good price, so that is really your opportunity, I would say, to get as much as you can from your high-sec mining. And then we have this isogen, where we do have, yeah, indeed a volume spike, but the market has apparently still absorbed that very easily. That may have tried to move things back up here a little bit, but the market doesn't want to move away too much from 40 ISK, it seems. 41.80 for the sellers, 40 ISK for the buyers. And yeah, the good news, well, although up here, once you go down towards the 50 ISK range, yeah, there it is. There's the volumes, there's the old reserves. And so this is the theory that I did share, and I think some people like jumped on that a little bit and poured some ISK into the isogen. But we still have to go through this. Look at this, at 58 you get 200 million units. Compare that to the availability of Mexalon. That's crazy. You still have 50 million here, another 30, another 40 here. Then we get to the 50 ISK barrier. Yeah, someone is trying to sell 300 million units here. 49, another 100 million units. 48, another 80 million units. These are those old reserves that are still playing havoc with the game. And there's even more stuff out there. Look at that aggressive buying over the course of just one page. We go down from 48 ISK down to 42 ISK. So there's still quite a bit of people that are willing to just dump the isogen that they have at anything above 40. Considering the 1 year chart, this is still double and over double the price that we had a year ago. So this is still definitely not bad, but there is that little bit of inertia, and the reason is all of that extra stuff that's lying in wait, that needs to be sold, needs to be absorbed, and that's actually not that easy to do. It may take a little bit of time, but I still feel like in the long run, the logical thing for isogen would be for all of these reserves to eventually dry up, and then the availability just should follow that line where titanium has the 50, 100 million units, pyrite has the 20 to 50 million units, Mexalon is moving into the ones, and then 20 as really the outlier, and isogen should be below that. It should have like the 100,000, 500, 600,000 like this, that would be the more normal volumes that I would expect in Isogen itself. Unfortunately, it was not just in all likeliness that it was so much, so very available in the previous years that it could just be mined in massive amounts. It was basically becoming a side product that was next to worthless. The consumption in New Eden of Isogen is also quite a bit lower, of course, than Mexalon, than Pyrite, and then Tritanium. And so, you know, this may really be the one mineral where it is going to take the longest time to normalize to the new situation of the resource scarcity that CCP has introduced. That's the story on that. I myself don't make major investments in the billions of dollars or anything like that. My strategy for Isogen, this is the one mineral that when I mine, I hold on to it, right? If I find Isogen from anywhere, then I just hold on to it. If I have Tritanium, Pyrite, Mexalon, that stuff, I sell, I turn it into ISK right away. I mean, just look at this chart. Just makes too much sense. For Isogen, yeah, look at this chart. I'm willing to wait for a better price on that one myself. After that, we have Noxium. That is also slowly moving away from its high point and starts to move around 1,000 disk instead of 1250. 1,000 for the sellers, 952 for the buyers. Here, I feel like we're back in that normal range, right? We have definitely got a pretty big premium compared to Mexalon. Look at the volumes here as well. The outlier is 10 million units. You get two of them above 1 million units. And then here we go, 600,000 units, 200,000 units. Yeah, you're paying 1,000 disk for something that is a lot harder to get, less available, also less needed in all of your industry jobs, but still what seems to be outpacing that by quite a bit is just the sheer less amount that you can mine per hour on this, and of course the risk, because you have to go to low sec and nullsec potentially for that Noxium. So losing a little bit of ground, but still quadruple the price as well from the start of the year. And pretty expensive Noxium, although again, historically speaking, before the resource bonanza, this feels like it's a normal price for Noxium as well. After that, we have our nullsec minerals. Here is Zydrine. That also gives back a little bit of room, but is still going for 1,200 disk for the sellers and 1,150 for the buyers. Look at that super narrow margin. That is, of course, the story of minerals that have to be imported. What's the big difference here? You may say, well, look at those volumes. That doesn't make sense anymore. No, you can't mine this locally. So there's no one that's going out here a couple of jumps away in HiSec, mine some Zydrine that's available in small volumes, and then brings that to the market. These are importers that of course want some ISK, some bang for their buck for the transportation that they've done, and so it's quite a bit more normal that here you go back to the 15 million units, the millions of units on this as well. But the very big difference is 1,200 for the sellers, 1,150 for the buyers, and the average price is going to be right on the 1,200 mark, if I'm not mistaken. So let's take a look at that, 1,199. That means that like 90-95% of the trades are happening right here. The sellers, because they have to import the Zydrine into Cheetah, are dictating the price almost exclusively. Buyers have to go up super high to just get a chance of buying any Zydrine from the market. No one is dumping straight to these guys. There's no margin opening up here. This is a different market once again, which had completely changed with Moon Mining, which had dropped the price to 500 disk. But this is a different market. This is one dominated by nullsec, who has a sort of a monopoly, you could say, on the import of this stuff, and that puts them in a very strong position, of course. And we still have a reverse here as well. Here is Megasite that is still stuck above 600 disk as well. 650 for the sellers and 581 for the buyers. Volume wise, this is in line with what we're seeing with Zydrine, so I don't have too good an explanation, but I also want to give you guys that perspective that historically speaking, Megasite has been more expensive by a little bit than Zydrine as well. So I still feel like Megasite and Isogen have this catch up to, in all likeliness, do, unless there is someone out there that has this way that they can still produce a lot of megasite, a lot of Isogen, and bring that to the market compared to what's possible for Zydrine, and I would say Mexlon then, if you want to continue that comparison. It may be Triglavian stuff, and Edencom, that there's still sites there that spawn this stuff or something like that in volumes that would make sense and keep these prices down, but I don't know of this myself. So again, my strategy is not, alright, now I'm gonna pour billions of ISK into Megasite, billions of ISK into Isogen. That's definitely not how I try to manage my stuff. For me, it's again, right, if I have a lot of loot and I happen to be reprocessing a lot of that and I'd have some megasite, yeah, I'd hold on to that. Same with the Isogen, but everything else, I'd turn that into ISK as quickly as possible because those prices look pretty damn good to me. And yeah, that's the story of minerals. I like it personally. I think that it does give quite a bit more incentive for miners to go after some stuff. And yeah, right now, Mexlon, Pyrite, Tritanium, right? So I think it's Plagioclase in HiSec. And then Noxium, still a really good price at 1000 ISK, so you have a reason to go into low sec. And then of course Zydrine, Megasite, you know, nullsec has its own resource again that it can dominate, that it can price gog if it wants. It can basically dictate the price at which us high-seekers will have to buy those minerals at. And then finally we get our oddball out. Here is Morphite. Ooh, ouch! 1 year high point at 50,000 ISK. Same story in a sense as Zydrine and Megasite, of course, dominated by nullsec. I think that's the only place where you can get Morphite at the moment. 55,000 ISK for the sellers, 51,000 ISK for the buyers. And the average price at the moment is, let's see here, 51,000. Okay, we maybe went up a little bit too much, that there are some people that have investments that are dumping to these buyers and saying, I'm taking my margins and I'm getting out right now. That's probably what's happening, so expect a pullback on this one to happen at some point, but this is of course very impressive. I historically have been looking at less than 10,000 ISK as a jumping point for some investments in Morphite. If you've done that right here in September, you're looking at a 400% profit. I would definitely recommend that you try to take it. We don't see that very often in EVE Online, and that's pretty good for like, what is it, 1 to 3 months? Not bad at all. And if anyone has an explanation for this new high for Morphite, definitely put that in the comments. But this is a pretty big double move here, and it's just a crazy high price. I'm not sure if we've actually ever seen Morphite this high. I've been checking the market for a long time. We've seen 20 and 30k, that has happened before, but this definitely feels like yeah, a pretty big event happening there in the Morphite market. Again, if you have some cheap stuff, or if, like me, now Morphite doesn't really come from reprocessing or anything, but if you'd always have done that same thing that I said, right, for all of this time here, if you happen to have Morphite, you just hold on to it. Yeah, this is your time to shine. You can definitely sell it at the best price by a country mile in about a year. So interesting times in the minerals. Let's move on to PI, but first I'll drink a little bit of water here. Like that, and so PI is coming in at 32.30. Let's go. And so this again is going to be quite a drain on the available ISK for everything else. And whoops, we were here for PI, so let's take a look at this. And yeah, the trend is pretty obvious. Advanced PI material tied to structures. I think this one is being hit by bad news on all sides. Not a lot of demand for structures at the moment. It's become a lot harder, and it's going to become even harder. I think that the cores will basically become an obligation come January, just to set up a structure, just to deploy it. And so at the moment there's that. Then there is the fact that nullsec is really rolling its its influence into other spaces as well, because they want that full mineral spread, the ability to provide for themselves across space. I actually did a quick jump into Dital, and yeah, it's kind of dead. 6 people in local, you know, at like an evening time that normally we'd see 20, 30, maybe even 40 people sometimes in Dital. So that does mean that there's a lot less structures out there, and for I think high-sec players there's a lot less incentive and a lot more risk to do so, which means that advanced PI material demand of course is down the drain. And then next to that we have this mineral resurgence, which means less ISK available for passive stuff. CCP has also said they want to increase the value of doing stuff in EVE Online. PI is basically the most opposite activity you can find. It's as passive as it gets, and as a result the value here is dropping substantially. Started the year at 2 million ISK, ends the year at 1 million ISK here. 1.2 million still for the sellers, 920,000 for the buyers. So that's again still a very, very wide margin, showing the lack of demand for advanced PI material at the moment. And to get a 1 million average, you can see on some days there's still dumping happening to these buyers. It's completely different from what's happening with Zydrine here. These buyers are actually catching some of those broadcast nodes that are produced at the moment as well. Construction blocks is trying to crawl out of the hole, but went to a low point of 7,500 and below. Currently selling for 8.6, buyers are at 7.7, still a super wide margin here as well. Away from the bottom, but clearly still trading at a very low price point. Consumer electronics not able on the 5-day moving average to go above 7,500 ISK, 7.5 below that for the sellers, 6,900 for the buyers. Still a decent margin here, and that's it for the buyers. I can hardly browse through buyers if you disregard the 500 ISK, which is like kind of a crazy price, of course, just mostly counting on someone to make a mistake. Then yeah, there's just no demand happening right now for consumer electronics. Then our coolants, also another leg down in the last 10 days or so, now substantially below 7,500, 7,600 let's say. I'm just gonna go through this one decently quickly because I think we get the picture at this point. 6,500, more than 1,000 ISK margin between sellers and buyers on something that costs 7,500 from the sellers. That is still a super wide margin as well. So again, 1 year low point. Then we have our exceptions. Here is Cryo Protection Solutions. If you see this March-April bubble, that was an introduction of implants for the Triglavian stuff, and as a result this one still has a little bit of a better average price that's able to hold on to, and in fact it is pulling up from 100,000 ISK. And that may be me as well. I'll be honest here, because this is exactly the tactic that I'd been talking about as well. I would look for investment opportunities when you can grab cryoprotected solutions below 100,000 ISK. Now, about a week ago, there was enough pressure. Sellers were starting to get very close, and I think just below 100k. So those buyers had dropped off. And when that happens, that's where your best chance is, of course, to put up a buy order and to grab some of those cheap cryoprotected solutions when the average price goes back up here away from the 110. That means that sellers are again dominating the price. It's a lot harder now to buy at around 93,000, but last week it was possible. You can see the volumes right here that I've pushed up the price, some investing in here, and honestly I think it's the right move, because eventually there's bound to be an equivalent implant coming to the game for the Eden.com ships as well, and then you want to be ready with this stuff because it's needed in implant production. You know, there's probably fleets out there and niche usage for these ships that some players will absolutely want those implants on day one, and that's when you'll probably be able to sell at a nice profit, like what we saw here about 8 months ago. Enriched uranium back on the downside, below 7,500 ISK for refined PI materials on average, and with a sell price of 8.4 and a buy price of 7.2, you can see who is dominating the trade here again. that is still those buyers. So it's just, all right, you know, I just want to get rid of my enriched uranium. 7.2, here you go, take it, get rid of it. It's kind of bad if you know, if you want to do a lot of PI, or if you want to plex your account through PI. But this is just the reality of the market at the moment. Passive stuff in ETH, very hard to turn that into ISK. Integrity response drones, you know, 2.5 million, actually a normal price about a year ago. And look at that, we're just going straight through the 1.5 million, no resistance whatsoever. We're just continuing on that downtrend. Structure stuff, not in a good spot. 1.4 million for the sellers, 1.3 million for the buyers. Look at the lack of buyers here. No one is buying that. Eventually, of course, I think that grabbing some of that, being ready for perhaps a resurgence, another use for this, you know, it would probably require a CCP change, but you know, eventually this will start to look like a chart where you might want to jump in on it and be ready to have at least some of that stuff ready. Then we have our mechanical part for fuels. Ouch, that's also quite painful, of course. Very strong up until this summer and even the early fall, I would say, above 10,000 ISK. Not bad for something that's so easy to produce on barren planets, but then just the unstoppable downtrend for PI coming through here as well. 7,200 for the sellers, 6.5 for the buyers. That is very, very cheap. Another exception here, get some nanites that is being pushed back up to 5,000 ISK as well. My barrier for investing below 5k, yes. Above that, no. So this is still investment worthy. Buyers at 4,000 ISK is pretty damn cheap. But again here, look at that potential. We went up to 10,000 ISK on the introduction of implant sets. No, I'm actually starting to doubt, was this Triglavian stuff? It could have been the shield slaves and things like that as well that had done this. But it shows that correlation between this nanite PI material and implants. So if you want to be ready, honestly, as close as possible to 4k, I think it's not a bad deal. Nano factories tied to structure again, advanced PI, so above a million, now down 750. 800,000 for the sellers, 633,000 for the buyers. And again, so you can browse quite a bit through those sellers, and then for those buyers, that's it. So the lack of demand is pretty obvious. The lack of available ISK as well. Organic motor applicators, 1 year low point at around 700,000 ISK, 730 for the sellers, 655 for the buyers. Recursive computing module starts at 1.5 million and above. Sellers now well below a million ISK, and it just keeps coming. You'd think maybe they'd pause, maybe they'd say no, you know, I don't want to go below a million ISK. But yeah, with buyers at 750,000, obviously, you know, that's a lot of pressure to still try to sell. Then we get robotics, also 1 year low point, you know, tied to fuels. I'm kind of surprised by this, but perhaps with, of course, all of these structures taken off the field now that will not be replaced, it's a lot less demand for fuels. And so I think the market is here also hit, you know, by two things: by the lack of ISK, which is being sucked up by minerals, by Tech 1 ships, by all of that part of the economy, and of course the fact that there's less structures, less demand for fuels. So who is going to invest in this type of PI material? Not a lot of people at the moment. So 67,000 for robotics. Normally this stuff costs 100,000 ISK. Buyers coming in at 63,000. Super pronounced 1 year low point. Again, does start to look like an opportunity, but I would be very, very careful, right? Definitely, if you do want to do these investments, do so with ISK that you can practically write off, that you definitely don't need in the short to medium term, because I think it's going to take quite a bit of time to recover here. Self-harmonizing power cores, same story, losing almost 50% from the start of the year. Sterile conduits, same story again, right? 1.3 million, yep, start of the year. 900,000 for the sellers, 700,000 for the buyers. That's still such a wide margin between sellers and buyers. There's just no buyers here. Yukomi superconductors, look at that lovely implant spike again, and this is the one that has just never really moved. And so here, that's an indication that it's not, probably not just me that has caused the increased price in some of the others. like here, because of course we have another volume spike here as well that is keeping the price well away from 50,000, and that's where I would make a move. So 74 for the sellers, 62,000 for the buyers. That is definitely still not cheap on this one chart here. And then finally our wetware mainframes. Unfortunately for us PI enthusiasts, this is just confirming the 1 year low point trend in advanced PI materials. Buyers below a million, now some buyers coming in at 1.3 million, but that's really it. And if you compare that to the 2.2 million at the start of the year, then this is still of course very bad. Next up, the advanced moon materials coming in at 43.30. There we go. Let's take a look at trends here. Crystalline carbonite for Galente Tech 2 production, landing on the 137, 144 for the sellers, 138 for the buyers. All right, stopping the bleeding at perhaps a slightly below average price, but 148 feels decently close to the 150. This is actually quite reasonable. I'm a little bit surprised by that, considering I'd made that Tech 2 video. I was starting looking at the Tech 2 ships to fear a general Tech 2 crash. We saw there that there's definitely exceptions to the rules. I think quite a few people pointed out very correctly that the Tech 2 market is very volatile with the meta, right? The introduction of the ESS has really brought the afterburners forward, so 100 MN afterburner for a big battleship in there is very popular at the moment, and that one is actually at a really high price, but we do have this underlying pressure on Tech 2 prices because of the raw materials that are being mined now in very big quantities in Nullsec. And from that perspective, the fact that crystalline carbonite is able to hold on to this 140-150 range is not bad at all. It's actually pretty impressive. Let's take a look at the next one, which is titanium carbide for Caldari production. All right, went to a 1 year low point at 140. Pushed back up to 170 all of a sudden, not bad at all. 168 for the sellers, 155 for the buyers, right back on maybe even a slightly above average price. Okay, I did not expect that, but here it is. Very nice comeback. Then we have our 3.1 Fernite carbide for Minmatar. Also went to 1 year low point, but some volume, some people making moves here and pushing that back above 125. In fact, 152 for the sellers, 118 for the buyers. They have opened up a seriously wide margin. That supply is going to start to nibble at these prices very quickly. But again, another move up in the carbides, and then we have our tungsten for Amar that also went to 1 year low point and some investment, but here very different, right? Buyers of Fernite carbide pushed the price up to 150, right back to, I'd say, the high end of its average. Tungsten carbide very carefully just staying at the 140 range, 142 for the sellers, 135 for the buyers. So some very opportunistic investing here, some very aggressive investing in the Fernite carbide market. That's definitely a difference here. Let's take a look at how this translates to our meta materials. Here is, I always have to look for this a little bit, photonic meta materials for Galente production. Slight move up to 12.5k, but still definitely on the cheap side. 12,000 for the sellers, 11,500 for the buyers. Narrow margin, move up from a bottom range, and definitely not great in the volumes. Decently cheap, below average at the moment. Then we had our non-linear for Caldari, which I think was very strong. Yeah, 22,000, super expensive. Finally looked like it dropped off in the last week or so, and perhaps would be moving to a different range. This was kind of my expectation, that perhaps non-linears would move a lot closer to the price of the Galente equivalent and things like that, but nope. Also here, a resurgence back to 20,000 discs, some more investing, I would say. 20k for the sellers, 18,500 for the buyers. Again, look at the volumes, quite substantial here. And then we have our plasmonic for Minmatar, also a volume spike, but look at the price response, almost nothing. 14,400 for the sellers, 12,500 for the buyers. That's definitely at the cheap end of the spectrum for plasmonic metamaterials. And then we have terahertz metamaterials that also that actually is very strongly correlated with the carbide equivalent here, as increased volume, a slight jump up in price, but very, very carefully. You could try to like jump that up to 17.5 or something like that, but nope, they're very careful. 14,000 for the sellers, 12,700 only buying the absolute cheapest terahertz metamaterials on the market. So I've got a little bit of a mixed picture here. Actually, very strong ability to maintain average prices on the carbide stuff. And then some investors seem to be taking positions in these advanced moon materials tied to the Tech 2 chip production. So I also did not see a general crash in the market. So very interesting. I think moves around the meta are indeed very, very important if you want to trade in the Tech 2 chip market. And then of course rebalancings, changes from CCP can have very big impacts here as well. We still have our other advanced materials here. I think that it's going to be a little bit more uniform in line with PI. For instance, fermionic condensate still very flat at its 1-year low point range. Ferrogel, a little bit of a bouncy behavior, but look at the range, right? Starts here at 40,000 is currently selling for 31,000. Buyers coming in at 30,000, most at 28. So this is still starting to move basically at this much lower range. Then we've got Fullerides, slight move up, but again, 1,000 disc normally at the start of the year and above. 700 disc for the sellers, 650 for the buyers. That's again very cheap, but it is starting to bottom out here at least. Do we see more of those? Ouch. Hypersynaptic fibers down another leg to 1-year low point, less than 9,000 disc now. Yep, 9k for the sellers, 8.6 for the buyers. Nano transistors also back down, so now well below 4k. Yep, below 4,000 for the sellers, 3,400 for the buyers. A good that moved between 5 and 6k for most of the year. Then we have our phenolic composites continuing to really struggle to stay above 1500s. Ceramic fibers finally bouncing off of 300 disc, start the year at 400. So again, here I think it's the ISK pressure that is being felt. There's just not a lot of ISK left to invest in this stuff anymore when everything is being used into the minerals, the Tech 1, the base of the economy. So quite a bit of pressure right here. Alright, next up we'll have our Tech 2 ships, but some more drinking in line. So I can keep going. So Tech 2 ships at 50.30. There we go, and let's take a look at that. Here's the Basilisk holding strong at 230 million ISK, 227 for the sellers, 205 for the buyers. And to get this average price right here, honestly, sellers must be dominating the price. So no one is dumping aggressively at the moment. We don't have too much pressure on the price. So sellers are able to be patient, put up another sell order, and it will actually be picked up by the market at the moment. The Cerberus is starting to show the first signs of pressure here. Did pretty well in October, November to hold on to 250, then managed to defend 230 for quite a while, but eventually supply is coming in, and we're talking 240 now for the sellers, 198 for the buyers. And then just look at the sellers here, last 24 hours, a full page. That's quite a bit too much for the market, which is of course part of the reason why we're going down. Honestly, you could try to buy a Cerberus below 200 million right now, and I would give you a decent chance to be able to pick it up. Looking at this full chart, that's of course a very good purchase. Be a little bit careful here. I'm gonna give that same warning. Do your own homework. You're doing your own trades. Zero responsibility if something bad happens for Eve Talk. I just cover this stuff, and you guys have to make your own choices on this. But yeah, the Tech 2 Advanced Moon Mats stuff also does have pressure, and we saw in the other video that the very base materials is being overmined quite a bit. So be careful here. After that, we've got the Guardian, that is also down to a 1-year low point here at the moment. 173 million for the sellers, 165 for the buyers. Obviously, if you can buy well below 170, you're buying quite a bit below the chart. And you could probably do so at the moment, looking at this late pressure that's being built. And then here we have the Hound that worked its way below 20 million ISK, and this is really where I started to look like, are we looking at a general crash? But at least we managed to pull back up a little bit. 23 million for the sellers, and getting up to 24, even 26 is coming into range decently quickly. Nothing too new to report here on the sellers front, and buyers forced up to 20 million as well. It's still difficult to say exactly what's going to happen here. Is a lower range coming because of what's happening downstream in the production cycle, or is it upstream, you could say, on a production cycle? I'm still not sure. I'm basically still not sure. Why the hell do we see this apparently happening in the Hound and the Guardian, but then the Basilisk able to do really well? The Cerberus still moving in line with its yearly chart here, so I'm still not sure. Then we get the Ichthyorsa that is basically belying that whole, Tech 2 is coming under pressure, but it probably does have, of course, its own unique Triglavian part of the pipeline that's actually under pressure for higher prices. So it's at a 1-year high point. The Ichthyorsa is going for 781 million, buyers coming in at 702. It could be that this is tied to the event. Do we have an increased volume? No, actually not. We have decreased volume. It's basically becoming not available enough, and yeah, there's just no trades, too expensive for most players. I thought perhaps, it's a Tech 2 cruiser, it's very strong, and it could probably handle that battleship decently well. So I thought perhaps people would be jumping on Ichthyorsas for that, but yeah, that's probably a little bit too expensive. It's just too expensive at the moment and not available enough. Then we have the Ishtar, another one that was telling me, are we looking at that crash? But it of course has this other explanation. The drone changes were announced, and the Ishtar is one of the big casualties, being mostly a drone boat. It's selling for less than 200 million, and the buyers are coming in at 171. If you think that CCP will have a very interesting solution for the drone problem, you could say, then the Ishtar could actually look very juicy at the moment, of course. Then we have the Manticore that also went to a 1-year low point, but is coming back. Apparently we're above 25 on the average price again. Yeah, 26.5, not bad. 22.7 as well. Not too much supply coming in. So when the prices crashes, the suppliers hold off on continuing to flood the market. So here a small trade already, basically. Let's take a look at the lowest point here, 21 million, and now you're already selling at 26 million pretty easily. That's a 20% increase right here, so a potential small trade in the Manticore. Then we have the Munin, a little bit of volumes, but actually down. 202 for the sellers, 171 for the buyers. That's still at very, very big margin, and on the last 24 hours that's quite a bit of supply that is bringing the price down from 215 to 202 for the Munin. Here, same story. This is quite a bit of dumping. This is actually going to put quite a bit of pressure on the price. If you want to be aggressive on your buy order, this is what you're looking for. If you want to really buy a cheap Munin, I think right now a buy order has the best chance of actually grabbing one. Then we have the Nemesis that also went to a low point, close to 20 million, close to its 1-year low point, but finally we are moving back up a bit. 24 for the sellers, 22 for the buyers. Some supply is coming back online here, but that response does still exist, of course. When prices become ridiculously low, then sellers just hold off for a while. The Oniros, also belying that there is a general crash here. Very nice resurgence, but keep in mind only back up to 190, so back up to a lower end of its average. 200 million for the sellers though, that's not bad. 177 for the buyers, and throughout all of these months I did say, yeah, you can try to buy an Oniros, just make sure you don't buy too many. I would never buy more than one myself, but now you're probably looking at 50 million potentially in profit very easily on any Oniros bought 2, 3, 4 months ago. So that's not bad. Just don't go overboard with your selling. So if you're like, if you bought like a dozen of them, you could crash the price down very quickly. But if you have just one Oniros, then yeah, sure, you could probably really take that profit without crashing the market. Then we have a Panther that is staying well above 1 billion ISK, alright, able to defend that range. Almost 1.1 for the sellers and 1 billion for the first seller. Okay, showing again no, we're probably not looking at a general market crash. It's probably more meta shifting. The ESS has probably changed things substantially. The purifier is settling nicely at 25 million, 25 for the sellers, 24.5 for the buyers. A little bit of oversupply, but the new supply is just not coming online, so sellers getting very careful on these low prices. Scimitar actually up a little bit at the tail end here, so almost 200 million for the sellers, 167 for the buyers. Very wide margin between the two. Then the video also up a little bit. We are able to stay well above a billion here, 1.1 basically, and well above for most sellers, almost a billion for the buyers. And then finally the Zealot, the one that was also like, all right, this is not good news, moving below 180 million ISK, 180 for the sellers, 166 for the buyers. That one is definitely very cheap at the moment at a 1-year low point. It could just be that the Zealot is just not the meta at the moment, and that is part of the problem there, that it's not a general take-two crash. But that also means that potentially there's quite a few opportunities in this market as well, where I'm going to give that very same warning. Holding a Zealot, yes. Holding a dozen Zealots, I would say no, because getting rid of those if and when the price goes back up is going to be very difficult. For one of them, yeah, you could easily see maybe like a 30% profit or something like that be on the books, be a possibility. So I actually have my one Zealot. Does it show up in my holdings? Yeah, which I bought at 187. So I bought way too early, but I have it. And if we manage to get back to like the 230, 250 range all of a sudden, that's when I can sell at a profit. All right, next up we have our Tech 3 ships coming in at 59.20. Apparently a pretty long one because of the introduction, but that's okay. Here is the Confessor going for less than 40 million ISK, I think settling on its average range. 40 million for the sellers, 38 million for the buyers, and availability. One sell order in the last 24 hours. This really doesn't feel out of line, so something else is grabbing a bit of that supply at the moment, and the Confessor has settled down in a place where it's maybe slightly undersupplied right now, but if this doesn't last too long, I think it's looking pretty healthy. Here is the Hecate, still going for over 50 million ISK, a bit of pressure on the price at the tail end. 48 for the sellers, 43 for the buyers. Here, last 24 hours, half a page. We do have 70 of them coming in here. That should put a bit more pressure on the price. You could expect Hecate heading towards 40 million ISK should be possible, but perhaps a little bit of a premium is going to be the reality for the Hecate. And then we get the Jackdaw that is just above 40 million ISK, 41 for the sellers, 36 for the buyers. And this one is a little bit odd because we do have 350 here, 160 here in the last 24 hours. That's a little bit dangerous. That's quite disruptive for the rest of the market. But I basically feel like we've got room for this, right? You could hold off on Jackdaw stuff right now because you can still make moves in the Hecate. You can still fill that up and bring the price down to 40 million ISK, and then the Confessor can use a couple more ships. So I would say, yeah, some Hecate production that will give the Jackdaw the breathing room to absorb this is definitely possible. Overall, I'm not seeing major problems or disruptions just yet in the tactical destroyer market. And then here, of course, the Svabel, the least popular tactical destroyer, is very quickly recovering from that high point of 50 million, which was an expected sell opportunity in this Svabel. And right now we're still going for 41 million for the sellers, 37 million for the buyers. Full page of Svabel, so here expect that one to normalize before the Hecate, basically, and it's still gonna drag, take a little bit of supply, but it will probably settle a decent bit below 40 million, is being the least popular tactical destroyer. And this is actually where the supply is going to bring this price down at the moment. So this is the one worrying thing here, like 500 Jackdaws. So that should still mean an hour, I hope so. Yeah, okay. That's a lot of Jackdaws right here within the top 10 of the sell orders. That is slightly dangerous for an oversupply situation, but I basically feel like with the lack of fresh supply in the Confessor, the normal extra supply in this Svabel that is bringing the price down, and then the room that we still have in the Hecate to bring ships to the market because of the margin that they have here on the price, that this will be absorbed and that we should not expect major disruptions or price crashes in the jackdaw or anything like that. And then we have our cruisers that have actually are coming back into a more volatile period. Here is the Legion jumping back up to 190 million, sellers at 166. So if you haven't sold the Legion that you managed to buy for probably like 135 or something like that throughout the summer, then you have yet another chance to take that profit. Next up here we've got the Loki, which you could very easily have bought at 150 million. Bit less volatility, but still 184, so there's definitely some profit to do there as well. 166 for the buyers, so less volatile than the Legion, but definitely higher than the bottom price throughout the summer. Then we have our Proteus, which had a slight bottom right here in September at 130, double spike up to 180. It's on its way down now at 155, but you can still sell probably from the bottom at a better price. And then finally we've got the Tengu that is also losing ground, but from a very nice upswing with a September bottom here as well, probably 132 or something like that if I remember correctly, 171. So here the story is, if you followed me in saying that, all right, maybe at those bottom prices a gamble in some of these with not too many ships was possible, right now you're looking at a pretty good sell opportunity, very specifically in the Legion. 130-ish to 190, that's a very nice profit to take, of course. So that's something that I'm probably gonna look into in the upcoming days. That is to turn over my Legion and perhaps my Loki as well. Although I'm training for the Legion first, so I'm still not sure what to do. But if you took those gambles along with me in Tech 3 cruisers, I hope that you did not buy too many of them, but right now you can definitely take profits there. And then for the extra product this week, well, add something new as well. Let's take a look at those new salvage drones at 1 hour 4 and 40, right? Something like that. And so we have drones, and then we have salvage drones, something that was asked quite a lot by Dunk Dinkel for Tech 2 salvage drones, and here they are. So let's take a quick look at this. Tech 1 salvage drones, actually pretty interesting, showing that Tech 1 price response due to minerals started the year at like 15,000 ISK and is now going for over 40,000 ISK. In fact, 50,000 for the sellers, 31,000 for the buyers. Pretty wide spread, pretty wide margin between sellers and buyers here. Quite a bit of volatility on these average prices, daily average prices, but definitely you see that increased cost and value for mining Tech and Tech 1 stuff, which is pretty damn impressive, of course. But it's at a pretty low range for the salvage drones, right? 50,000 ISK, that's not exactly the cost. So what's the Tech 2 salvage drone going for? Well, apparently someone managed to sell some at 6 million ISK, and then it's going down very quickly, and already you're paying 1 million to 1.4 million for a salvage drone 2. Buyers are starting to come online very carefully at 800,000 ISK practically. So this already feels very doable, very nice for something that has its uses for sure. And then we have our special Dunk salvage drone that actually was sold at well above 9 million ISK for the first one, and is still selling for 9 million ISK, it seems. Buyers coming in at 7 million ISK as well. And why is this one more expensive? Well, we can take a quick look at this. If we have the Tech 1 salvage drone, access difficulty bonus is of 3%. Then we'll take a quick look at the Tech 2 salvage drone, where it goes up to 4%. So that's not bad. I think that's like a 33% increased chance on any cycle to actually have a successful salvage. If you take the same baseline rig, I'd say that is pretty damn good. And then the Dunk salvage drones has actually a 4.5% chance, so 3 to 4.5. That's probably a 50% increased chance per cycle to actually get a successful salvage. That can save you a lot of time honestly, I think it's pretty damn interesting. Maybe it's a little bit too early for the dunk salvage drone. Do I want to spend 40 million for battle salvaging when I can get quite a bit of bonus already for just 5 million ISK? I think that's where I would make my first move. But eventually, perhaps, you know, if you have a specialized ship, right, a mission ship where you also want to salvage with, then the dunk salvage drones could definitely be very interesting there. If you have this one ship where you know that when you're flying it, you're gonna be salvaging as well, then, you know, those faction dunk salvage drones could definitely be the ticket, because that half percentage could actually mean a very big time saver in the long run, and could really be worth it. So there you go. You know, I want to take a look at this mostly because it is a couple of new goods that have been brought into the game. It's pretty damn cool, and yeah, it's going to perhaps have an impact longer term on the salvage market as well, because that has basically just been made easier, faster, more efficient as well. Could bring those prices down, because it could basically mean that more people will be salvaging as it will cost less time. Be careful when it comes to investing in salvage materials. It'll probably take quite a few weeks and months for that to actually show up, but it's something I'll try to keep in mind, and let's see if there is a notable impact on salvage materials from these new salvage drones. So that's going to be it for this EVE Talk, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you next time.